my pleasure to introduce Patti Breitman. Patti is a co-founder of Dharma Voices for the Animals, and she's the director of the Marin Vegetarian Education Group. She's the co-author of many books, including Even Vegans Die, and she was honored to receive the Lisa Shapiro Award for Unsung Vegan Heroes. Yay. We're very lucky to have Patti here locally. She lives just a bit north of here in Fairfax, California. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. I know it's the end of a long day, and I hope you enjoyed as much good food as I did today. It was absolutely delicious. I'm not insulted if you leave during my talk to get more of it. I understand because the thing is going to close after it's 6 o'clock, I think. So if you're hungry, I'm not insulted if you leave. I will presume it's because you want food. I won't take it personally if you walk out of my talk. I want to congratulate the San Francisco Vegetarian Society on 50 years. That's incredible. And I'm very pleased to be here to help them celebrate that 50-year anniversary. I also want to say this is very exciting for me because I'm celebrating an anniversary this year too. I'm calling it my crossover year. I was 32 when I became a vegan, and I'm 64 now. And that was in January of 1986. So every day since January 6th of 1986, I've been a vegan longer than I was not a vegan. So that's very exciting. So for the rest of my life, I'll have been a vegan longer than I was a non-vegan. So that's exciting. Can I see by a show of hands? And I'm very happy to welcome everybody. I'd love to see who's not yet a vegan. Thank you especially for coming to this event and to this talk. I so appreciate it. You're my key audience. The rest of you may learn something. But the people who aren't yet vegans, I hope they feel welcome and educated and at home here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, in the 32 years I've been a vegan, the mistakes I've made and lessons I've learned. And one of the first mistakes I made was I thought I had to do it alone. I became a vegan when I lived in Palo Alto. No, that's not true. Back up. I lived in San Francisco. I moved here from New York. And in New York, I had become a vegetarian the year before when I edited a book called Fit for Life by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. Harvey Diamond in the book said, if you put a baby in a crib with an apple and a rabbit, if the baby eats the rabbit and plays with the apple, I'll buy you a new car. But he never had to buy anyone a new car, and that persuaded me that we're not naturally carnivores. If carnivore saw a rabbit, she would salivate and get all excited and want to eat the rabbit. Babies want to pet the rabbit. They don't want to eat the rabbit. Anyway, that book turned me into a vegetarian, but then I moved to San Francisco and became a vegan, but I was the only vegan I knew. I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America, and that persuaded me that veganism was the way to go, but I didn't know any other vegans. And then I saw an ad in the newspaper when I lived in Palo Alto, a tiny little classified that said potluck dinner Sunday night at some church in Palo Alto. And I was so excited, and I went to it, and I met Jennifer Raymond, who was running those potlucks. She was the author of a book called The Peaceful Palate. And I met other vegans, and it changed my life completely. Now today, you don't have to go to a church basement, though there's nothing wrong with church basements. And I encourage you, if you don't have a vegan group meeting near you, start one, or invite friends over for a vegan meal once a month. But what was so exciting was, over the years, we now have meetups, vegan meetups in every county for all kinds of occasions. We have vegan organizations like San Francisco Vegetarian Society having dinner every Wednesday night in San Francisco at Opera Plaza. You can have a beautiful vegan dinner with other vegans. We also have this, in Sonoma County, there's the Compassionate Living Organization. Every month they have speakers and events. It is so easy now to connect with others, and that's a major, major lesson for me. We don't have to do this alone, and we shouldn't do it alone. I also made a mistake as a vegan, and many of us do this. We sell veganism as a cure-all. You will never get sick, you will never get a cold, you will never get cancer, you will never get heart disease, you will never get diabetes. It's not true. We reduce our odds tremendously, but we don't reduce them to zero. And if we sell veganism as a panacea and promise people all kinds of health benefits that they may not realize, they will then dismiss our message entirely because that part of it wasn't true. I wrote a book 2 years ago called Even Vegans Die. And you may recognize the design of the cover. We based it on Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die. And he wrote the foreword to this book. He wrote the foreword to this book, and he said in the foreword, you need both books on your bookshelf as bookends on either end. His book tells you how to live, and this book tells you how to die. And the importance of this book is it tells vegans it's a myth that we're not going to die. When I became a vegan, one of the doctors, I think it was Michael Clapper, it might have been John McDougall, but I think it was Michael Clapper, he said, all you vegans in the room are going to feel mighty foolish one day, lying in a hospital, dying from nothing. Because the prevailing myth back then was vegans will never die, vegans won't get sick. The fact is, a lot of vegans do get sick and a lot of vegans do die, and we have to welcome everyone to our movement, even people who are sick, even people who did everything right. People can do everything right and still get sick. It's the nature of the human body to age and to get sick. One of the mistakes I made when I was a new vegan was I attributed my health and vitality to veganism, when really it was my youth. Everyone who becomes a vegan in their 30s and is like, oh my God, I'm so healthy, I have so much energy. It's like, yes, well, you're in your 30s. Well, of course you have so much energy. I am telling everyone that there are so many good reasons to be vegan, but living forever isn't one of them. So do it for the animals, do it for the planet, do it because you probably will see an improvement in many of your numbers when you go to the doctor for a blood test, but it's not guaranteed. You probably will reduce your cholesterol, but it's not guaranteed. You will definitely reduce your risk for a number of illnesses, but it's not guaranteed. We can't reduce the risk to zero. So that was a major mistake I made and a lesson I learned. Another mistake I made was I thought some vegans were doing it wrong. When you learn how to be a vegan, you think the way you learned is the only way to do it. So if you become a vegan for health reasons, you think everyone's got to make the healthiest choices ever, and that you should never have sugar, and you should never have oil, and you should never have fried food, and you should never have processed food. Never is a very dangerous word. My whole life is a series of what I said I'd never do. I was never going to leave New York. I was never going to get married. I was never going to get divorced. I was never going to get remarried. I was never going to start my own company. I was never going to retire. Everything I said I'd never do, I have done. I don't like the word never at all. I'm very careful around the word never. Anyway, there is no wrong way to be vegan. If you mostly eat a healthy diet, that's great. If you mostly eat a terrible diet, that's great too if it's vegan, because you're not hurting the planet and the animals. Most of these diet trends like paleo and I can't even name the Atkins, they're very selfish because they're all about the person who wants to lose weight. They're very self-centered. They're all about me, 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 me. A vegan diet is about others. We happen to thrive on a vegan diet for the most part. But it's not about our thriving. It's about not harming the planet, not harming the oceans, not harming the animals, not harming the air, not wasting water. It's a very altruistic kind of way of living. And I want to recommend that we get away from the health benefits, which will accrue for the most part, but it's not guaranteed. So I want to recommend that everybody give up the idea that we're going to live together, live forever and die from nothing. We're going to die from something, we just don't know what it is yet. So that was another mistake I made. I also want to say, I used to think that veganism was all about what we ate. I want to define veganism according to the man who coined the word vegan, or the woman and man, Sally Shirley and Donald Watson in 1944 in the Vegan Society in London, decided to call vegan vegetarians who don't want to eat dairy or eggs. They took off it's the first two letters and the last two letters of vegetarian. I don't know if anyone, veg, the first three letters and the last two. Vegetarian became vegan. I didn't realize that. Did anyone here know that already? Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, it was vegetarianism condensed to vegan. Here's how it was defined. The society now, well, I'm going to tell you how the society that he belonged to now defines veganism. There's a key phrase in here that I find really important. Veganism is a philosophy and way of life. Notice it doesn't say diet. It's a philosophy and way of life, which seeks to exclude, and here's the phrase that's so important, a philosophy and way of life which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practical, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals. But remember the phrase, as far as is possible and practical. We should not shame people who are halfway there. Every move in that direction is a good one. We should not embarrass and shame people who are taking their first baby steps toward a plant-based diet. Everything in that direction is a good movement. He said as possible and practical, as far as is possible and practical. The Dalai Lama once said, whenever possible, be kind. And then he added, it's always possible. I love that. But practical and possible don't always work. So I don't fault people who make exceptions once in a blue moon when they have to do something that isn't vegan. I don't say, oh, you're not really a vegan because you had sour cream when you went to your Aunt Kathy's house. Who cares if you had sour cream when you went to Aunt Kathy's house? If 99% of the time you avoid sour cream and other dairy products, you're doing good in the world. You're doing good for the cows. So once in a blue moon, if something happens where you can't practically be a vegan, don't beat yourself up and don't beat up anybody else for it. I don't think we should be purists. We want to engender and encourage kindness, not policing. The phrase, the vegan police, has anyone heard that? Oh, the vegan police are going to catch me. The vegan police don't exist. That's in our mind. That's us saying, oh my God, I'm not a good enough vegan. Oh my God, I'm not a good enough vegan. Making the commitment to move in that direction, to orient toward kindness, is what we need to do. It's not about the vegan police giving you a ticket if you have a dairy product once every 12 years. It's not going to change the course of the world. Another mistake I made is that food was all that matters, and food is all that it was about. In fact, everything we take in is important. Watching the news gives us a mindset that can agitate the heart and agitate the spirit. Coming to a festival like this is the antidote to that. It's being surrounded by kind people who are nonviolent and who promote nonviolence. Thank you. I've stopped reading magazines that have ads in them for the most part. I'll look at the Sunday Times magazine once in a while. I'll look at National Geographic, they have ads once in a while. But magazines that I have fallen in love with are the Sun magazine. It's from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Or is it South Carolina? North Carolina. Chapel Hill has a fabulous magazine called The Sun, and it's literary, no ads whatsoever. It has poetry, short stories, true life essays, quotations, classic quotations, excerpts from classic books that made a difference in the world. I love that magazine. It comes once a month, and whenever I read it, my heart expands. It's not a vegan magazine, but it has no advertisements, and it opens your heart, so I'm recommending it. So what we take in, what movies we watch, what magazines we read, what people we associate with, what we choose to look at on the computer, it makes a big difference in our hearts and our heads. So veganism is about fostering kindness and compassion and not abusing animals and not using animals. I think it's also a way to keep the heart open. And so it's not just about the food you eat, it's about the choices we make in our lives other than food to keep the heart open and to keep us vulnerable and loving. Oh, this is a good one. Another mistake I made was I thought that small steps don't count, that everyone had to be vegan tomorrow. Like, stop everything, you're hurting animals, their lives depend on it, tomorrow you must go vegan. It turns out there's a wonderful book by a man named Tobias Leinart called How to Create a Vegan World. And all the studies show that small steps help. Meatless Mondays encourage people to just go one day a week without meat. They don't tell you to give up dairy, they don't tell you to give up anything else, just go meatless on Mondays. Turns out people who adopt that research recipes to serve on Mondays, and they find way more recipes than a Monday can accommodate. So they might have the same kind of meal on a Tuesday, or they might have the same kind of meal on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And people who start slowly with Meatless Monday are more open to hearing the message about why aren't people eating meat? And once they're hearing that message, they're more open to listening to that message because they now feel like they're part of the solution, not the problem. So small steps make a big difference, and I learned a lot from that book called How to Create a Vegan World. Also, I learned from, does everyone know Melanie Joy? She wrote a book I recommend to everyone. Go to your library and get this out this week. It's called Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. She is brilliant. She's one of the smartest women I've ever met. And she talks about carnism. I used to think that being a vegan was a choice and that eating meat was a choice, and we all have these free will choices to make. It turns out Melanie Joy describes carnism as the belief system that it's okay to eat certain animals but not others. And every society has this belief system, but the animals vary. Some countries don't eat dogs and cats. Some countries don't eat cows. Some countries don't eat horses. Some countries don't eat pigs. It varies by country, but there's always some food, some animal on the list of okay to eat, not okay to eat. It turns out it's not so much a personal choice whether we're eating meat growing up or whether we're vegetarians. It's a societal stream that we're born into, and the stream is pushing us downstream in a certain direction. The schools we go to, the institutions we go to, the Army, the Navy, the schools, the hospitals, our parents, everyone we encounter from childhood on is part of a system, a belief system, an ideology telling us it's okay to eat certain animals and not others. It's an ideology we're born into. And until you can name it, you can't see it or understand it. So Melanie Joy named it carnism and talks about the fact that the people who grow up eating meat and never questioning it are just doing what they think is normal, natural, and necessary because society has told them it's normal, natural, and necessary. A vegan has stepped out of that stream and has its own ideology saying it's not normal, necessary, or natural. So I love that book, and I recommend, you don't even have to read the book. Go to her website, carnism.org, and you will see her overall theory, and you can read about, she starts it out with a little film where people are at a dinner party enjoying a stew that's just delicious. And one of the guests says, "This is the best stew I've ever had. How do you make it?" And she said, "Well, you start with a golden retriever." And suddenly the guests don't want to eat the stew because, oh my God, it's made from a dog? And then she points out there's really no difference between whether it's made from a cow or a pig or a dog or a fish or a chicken. It's still a living, breathing animal that society tells us it's okay to eat. So it's a fascinating book, and I learned that it's not really our choice to be meat eaters. We can't accuse people who aren't vegetarian or vegan of choosing to be meat eaters. The society pushed them that way, and it's very hard to swim against the current. So I applaud everyone who's swimming against the current, and we have to continue to swim against the current. You get stronger the more you do it. But when you're new to it, you have to encourage people gently and kindly because society is telling us we're crazy. Now I will tell you, if you listen to the news, there are crazy people out there doing all kinds of violent things, and they think we're crazy. The world thinks that vegans are crazy. It's completely upside down world. We're the sane ones, and the crazy people are out there buying guns and shooting people and shooting animals. Anyway, that's my political message. Okay, the other mistake I made was, and this started back in high school, I thought I had to choose whether I wanted to identify as a feminist or an environmentalist or an animal rights activist. It's all the same thing. You don't have to choose labels. If you care about women and females and other females on this planet, you want to be a vegan because it's the female chickens and the female cows that suffer the most, except for the male chicks who were killed at birth, but the life of a laying hen is miserable. It's also an environmental stance to be a vegan because we're using less water, we're polluting less air, we're creating less methane. So being an environmentalist and being a feminist is the same thing as being a vegan, and you don't have to choose. Living in the Bay Area, OMG, are we lucky. I just want to list a few of the places that didn't exist 32 years ago that are now havens, heavens, meccas for me as a vegan. Golden Era restaurant in San Francisco. Don't applaud for each one of these because you're going to love them all. Sanctuary Bistro in Berkeley. Muir's Tea Room in Sebastopol. Muir like John Muir. If you've never been to high tea at a vegan tea room, I highly recommend make reservations and go to Muir's like John Muir, M-U-I-R, in Sebastopol. Millennium, The Butcher's Son. Does everyone know about The Butcher's Son? It's on University Avenue, and it just crossed the street. Yes, sir?
Never ate there, but I would love to. I just discovered it through a writer friend of mine.
They just moved to a larger location across the street on University Avenue, and they have a beautiful backyard patio now that shares its space with a restaurant with a rose garden. So you sit The Butcher's Son, you sit among roses and eat delicious food, and you think it's in Berkeley on University Avenue, and you think you're at a delicatessen. Anyway, let me keep going because that's just the beginning. I want to say, this is how I know veganism is coming into its own. Muir's Tea Room does not advertise that it's vegan. It's just a tea house with delicious food, and a lot of people who go there don't realize it's vegan. To that point, When I was researching the book, Even Vegans Die, I had to go to Oakland to go to a meeting, what's called a death cafe. Strangers get together to talk about their feelings about death. And because they're strangers and not family, it's not charged with all the emotion of a conversation with family might be. So I'm walking around. I got there early. It was at a place called Chapel of the Chimes in the Piedmont neighborhood. And I was there early and wanted a soy latte. So I'm walking up and down the street looking for a coffee shop. And I come to a coffee shop and I say, can I have a soy latte? And they say yes, and they're making it. And they had pastries, a pastry cabinet about the size from here to there, a glass cabinet with the most gorgeous pastries you've ever seen. And I said, I was hoping for a vegan cookie. I said, do you have anything that happens to be vegan? And they said, everything is vegan. Timeless coffee. I had never heard of it. And I was like, you're kidding me. Everything's vegan? I said, yes. I said, I don't believe you. I'm a New Yorker. I said, I don't believe you. It doesn't say vegan anywhere. I thought they're going to sell me something and then laugh. We got another one. Ah, she thinks it's vegan. They said, go on our website. So while they were making my coffee, I went on my phone and I looked them up, and sure enough, everything in the store is vegan. Well, I bought a box of everything in the store to take home for my husband. I mean, I couldn't pass it up. They have birthday cakes and eclairs, and I mean, it was phenomenal. And I found out from friends of mine, they also serve brunch on the weekends, and they have fabulous vegan brunches. So if you live in Oakland or near Oakland, or you can get to Oakland, Timeless Coffee just astounded me with its variety of vegan pastries. It was unbelievable. They make birthday cakes, they make everything. I just can't believe they're not here, because I wanted coffee today, and that's the only thing missing at this festival was an espresso bar, and I'm thinking, why isn't Timeless here? They could really sell out. They could do very well. So anyway, one of my other mistakes was thinking that you couldn't eat out as a vegan. But coming from New York, I only ate out. The kitchens in New York are for show. Nobody really cooks. None of my friends cooked. They use their ovens to store shoes and sweaters. I mean, seriously, I mean, New York kitchens, you go to Zabar's and you bring food home, you don't cook. I entertained a lot, but I never cooked. I would get food and bring it in and serve it. Anyway, where was I going with this? I forgot where so when I became a vegan, those potlucks that Jennifer Raymond had in the basement of a church, somebody asked a question at one of her potlucks, and I thought her answer was so rude. I was sort of taken aback by how rude it was. And the more I'm a vegan, the more I realize it was a brilliant, accurate answer. So here's the question and answer. Somebody said, but I don't know how to cook. And her answer was, learn to cook. And I thought that's so rude. As a New Yorker especially, it's like, what do you mean learn to cook? That's what restaurants are for. Why should I learn to cook? It turns out my misperception was I always thought cooking had to be fancy and gourmet and show off and impressive. Cooking can be so darn simple. Jennifer Raymond's book, The Peaceful Palate, is still my favorite cookbook. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of fabulous vegan cookbooks out there now. I've even written some of them. My favorite cookbook is still Jennifer Raymond's The Peaceful Palate, and God bless her. She gave us permission to take our favorite recipes from her book and put them in our books. So Never Too Late to Go Vegan and How to Eat Like a Vegetarian, even if you never want to be one, both have Jennifer's recipes among the recipes in there. We did not create new recipes for either book. We took our favorite recipes from other books and just got permission to use them. But what I learned from Jennifer is learning to cook is as simple as learning to microwave some sweet potatoes and steam some kale. That's it. That could be dinner. You put some pumpkin seeds on top, or you mix miso and tahini with water in the blender and pour it on top. You can make food in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. You can have a beautiful meal. She has meatloaf and tacos and lasagna. Things that sound complicated, but they're so easy when you use her recipes. Everything can be bought in a regular supermarket. You don't have to go to a natural food store. Nothing is hard to clean up because most of them use just one pot or pan to make the whole dish. And simplicity is the order of the day. I eat so simply now. I do most of my own cooking. I go out about 2 or 3 times a week, I would say, for either lunch with a friend or dinner with family. But for the most part, I'm cooking all my meals, and they're simple, simple, simple. The meals don't have to be fancy. That's what restaurants are for. They're not for feeding you day in and day out. They're for special occasions when you want something fancy. But the most nourishing foods in the world, the beans and the rice and the squashes, it's so easy. It doesn't take a chef or a gourmand to know how to cook. So what I thought was a very rude answer when she first answered that question has come to be more and more true for me. In fact, this is embarrassing to admit, I was on a cooking show, or I created a cooking show called Patti's Vegan Kitchen, which if you're in Marin County is on channel 26, no, channel 27.
No, it's 26.
It is 26, thank you. Anyway, the cameras came into my kitchen and followed me around while I made about a dozen or more recipes. And it's really for people who don't know how to cook, because I started with what can you put on toast? Most people know how to make toast, right? But when you're a vegan, people are like, well, what do you put on toast if you can't put cream cheese or butter? What do you put on toast? So there's a whole episode of what you can put on toast. So it's very simple. And I don't know if people can get it outside of Marin County. I have no idea. Probably not. You're not missing much, because you know what to put. I'll tell you what you put on toast. You put avocado on toast, you put vegan cheese on toast, you put jam on toast, you put, what else do we put on? Peanut butter, almond butter. Miyoko's butter, which you can get at Trader Joe's. You can put peanut butter, almond butter, any cashew butter. You can put anything you want on toast. You can put hummus, oh yeah, hummus on toast. Now, another thing is, I'm on a losing battle. I'm trying very hard to not bring plastic into my house. It's almost impossible, but learning how to make hummus makes it much easier, because instead of bringing all those containers of hummus that come in plastic, if you have a food processor and you can open a can, you can make hummus. You basically open a can of chickpeas, rinse them off and put them in a food processor, add a little garlic, add a little tahini, add a little water, which is I do instead of olive oil, and just make it smooth. That's it. You can avoid lemon juice, thank you. And you can buy lemon juice in a jar. You don't have to squeeze lemon, and you can buy garlic already peeled. You don't have to peel garlic. It's like you don't have to learn to do anything. And but you can call it cooking. You can prepare food. And instead of buying crackers, you can cut up vegetables and use them as dip. Red pepper, cucumbers, carrots, raw vegetables. In French, it's called crudité. It sounds very fancy, but it's just chopped vegetables. And I want to say what we call baby carrots aren't really baby carrots. They're big carrots that have been cut into smaller pieces because kids love to eat them that way. People started eating way more carrots when those baby carrots came on the market. They're like the most popular vegetable now because everyone likes the little ones. Well, I have found that even the little carrots are too big for me when I want to dip them, so I cut them in half so that there's a flat side and you can dip them more easily, because when they're round, the hummus falls off. I'm just saying. Also, if you love cheese, Miyoko's cheese to me was a game changer. She has hard cheeses and cream cheeses, and they're so much like dairy cheese that people who don't know that you're a vegan would never know that you're not serving dairy cheese. She went to a fancy food show when she was launching her cheeses, and she had a platter that they were supposed to bring out and serve everybody. Well, it came out at the wrong time. It came out when somebody else was speaking who was a dairy cheese maker. Nobody knew. Nobody knew that her cheese was served at the wrong time. That's fascinating to me. Anyway.
That's a great strategy.
It is a great strategy. It is a great strategy. Okay, what other mistakes did I make? How much time do I have? Well, thank you, but I'm supposed to end now. So I'm gonna tell you my last mistake, and then I'll take questions. My last mistake, and it's not really a mistake. There are violent, sad, horrible things happening to animals all the time. Likewise to the planet all the time, and likewise to other people all the time. We really can focus on what we want to focus on, and there is really ugly stuff out there. And those of us who've chosen to walk away from that and make choices that are kinder know that. But what I want to share is a strategy I've learned from two different sources. From taking an improvisational comedy class and from studying Buddhism. I learned this from both avenues, so you know it's true if improvisational acting and Buddhism both agree on it. The practice is called yes and. When you're doing improvisation, if someone says, here we are on the moon, you're not allowed to say, no we're not. You have to say yes and continue the story. And here comes the waiter at the moon's restaurant. You have to say yes and continue the story. Buddhism, it's the same thing. The world has all kinds of problems. Yes and we can be present right now with our breath. We can remember that everything is impermanent. Yes and it's also true that there's beauty in the world. So this yes and practice helps me a lot, because instead of focusing on all the ugliness, I can say yes, it's out there. And I can enjoy being a breathing partner with a tree. The trees breathe what I need, and I breathe what they need, and it's like we're partners. Thich Nhat Hanh said, with every step you take on the planet, you can imagine that your feet are kissing the earth. I love that. I was at a silent retreat last week where the teacher encouraged us to walk as if our feet were kissing the earth. Suddenly I felt very connected to the earth, but also very connected to everybody else walking on the earth at the same time. And I remembered as a kid wanting to dig to China at the beach, like if we dug a hole deep enough, would we come out the other side? I was reminded of that when I was walking on the earth, imagining kissing it, thinking there are people on the other side of the planet right now who are walking on the same earth. I'm connected to them. I'm doing the same thing they are. It opened my heart to so many beings who share the earth. I thought of babies taking their first steps and old people recovering from surgery and taking their first steps with a new hip or a new knee. The idea of kissing the earth with every step was just a beautiful antidote to me for like, oh my God, what we're doing to this planet. We can heal it with our hearts, we can heal it with our attitude, we can heal it with love. And our vegan diet is part of that, our vegan lifestyle is part of that. The other thing is, there are people out there who make a living trying to make us laugh. I find that delightful. There are people who make a living writing comedies, writing greeting cards. When I was very poor in New York, working for like $11,000 a year, at lunchtime I would go to a Hallmark store and read the greeting cards, and they would crack me up. It's like free entertainment. It's out there to make you laugh. It's just fabulous. In fact, I bought a card this year that I loved, and I bought it for my mother, but I should have bought 10 of them because I can give it to everybody I know. It said, don't let society dictate what you can and can't do at your age. And you open it up and it says, that's what your knees are for. Somebody came up with that. And they're making a living trying to make me laugh. I find that delightful. Okay, also the New Yorker has wonderful cartoons. Every library has a New Yorker. The cartoons are fabulous. There's a newspaper called The Funny Times that comes out once a month. I highly recommend it. I subscribe to it. It's a newspaper like a Reader's Digest, but only of funny stuff. So articles and cartoons from around the country that were published in the last 30 days are not condensed, but they're collected and put into the Funny Times. And when that comes, I can read it and laugh out loud. It's just really funny. Somebody just sent me a cartoon today in my email that had a squirrel on the couch at a psychiatrist's office. And the squirrel is saying, I heard that they say you are what you eat. That's why I'm nuts. And also, I want to tell you, if you have a smartphone and you have Siri, you can say the following, which my husband did, and I'll share one of the answers with you. You can say, Siri, tell me a joke. And every once in a while, she'll tell you a joke. Well, he Googled jokes about vegetables and fruits, and this is what came up. I love this one. I'm modifying it for a vegan audience. Some people say a vegan diet is dangerous. And I say, well, it can be. There was a woman last week who drowned in her breakfast cereal. She got pulled in by a strong current. I know, it's silly, but I'm saying there are ways to make yourself laugh, and it's important to find them. Every year for my birthday, I ask for a page-a-day calendar where you tear off a page a day, and it's called Bad Puns and Jokes. And they really are bad, and they're groaners, but I love them. And every day when I'm making breakfast, I tear off a page and I laugh. It's like they're stupid jokes, but they're funny. I just want to encourage everybody, the antidote to the news, the antidote to the violence and the craziness out there is being vegan and keeping a sense of humor, keeping a sense of joy, keeping the yes and practice going. So time is up here, and yes, I will stay to answer questions, but I thank you so much for your kind attention. All the books are $15. Each book is $15. And Sarah can make change for you if you'd like to get a book. So I'm here for questions or for books.